The year is 1900. The Qing Dynasty, once a mighty empire, teeters on the brink of collapse. China, weakened and humiliated by a string of defeats at the hands of foreign powers, faces an uncertain future. Western nations, eager to exploit China's vast resources, carve out spheres of influence, imposing their will upon the once proud nation. Amidst this backdrop of political turmoil and social unrest, a storm gathers force. A potent mix of anti-foreign sentiment, economic hardship, and religious tension ignites a firestorm that will engulf China for months to come. This is the story of the Boxer Rebellion, a desperate and bloody struggle against foreign domination and internal weakness. At the heart of this maelstrom was a secret society known as the Boxers, or the Righteous and Harmonious Fists. Drawing their strength from the rural peasantry, the Boxers channeled the growing anger and frustration of the Chinese people. They trained in martial arts, believing themselves to be impervious to bullets and foreign weapons. The Boxers' ideology was a potent blend of nationalism, mysticism, and xenophobia. They saw foreign powers as a threat to Chinese sovereignty and traditional values. Christian missionaries, with their alien religion and perceived association with imperialism, became targets of their wrath. The Boxers' message resonated with millions of Chinese who felt increasingly marginalized and exploited in their own land. Their ranks swelled with peasants, laborers, and even some disillusioned members of the Qing military. The stage was set for a violent confrontation. To understand the fury that fueled the Boxer Rebellion, one must look back at the decades leading up to 1900. China, once a self-contained world unto itself, had been forcibly opened to foreign trade and influence in the mid-19th century. This intrusion came at the hands of Western powers, whose superior military technology allowed them to dictate terms and extract concessions from the Qing government. The Opium Wars, fought between China and Great Britain in the 1830s and 1840s, stand as a stark example of this unequal power dynamic. Britain, seeking to force open the Chinese market to its opium trade, inflicted humiliating defeats on the Qing forces. The resulting treaties, such as the Treaty of Nanking, ceded Hong Kong to Britain and established a system of unequal treaties that granted Western powers significant economic and legal privileges within China. These treaties, often signed under duress, chipped away at Chinese sovereignty and fueled a deep sense of resentment among the population. Foreign powers established concessions in major cities like Shanghai and Guangzhou, areas where they enjoyed extraterritoriality. Their citizens were subject to their own laws, not Chinese law. This foreign presence, coupled with the economic exploitation that often accompanied it, created a fertile ground for anti-foreign sentiment to take root. The Chinese people, witnessing their nation's decline and the erosion of their traditional way of life, grew increasingly receptive to calls for resistance. Adding fuel to the fire was the issue of Christian missionaries. While some missionaries arrived in China with genuine intentions of spreading their faith and providing humanitarian aid, their presence was often viewed with suspicion and hostility. The missionaries' efforts to convert the Chinese to Christianity were seen by many as a direct attack on traditional Chinese beliefs and customs. Confucianism, deeply ingrained in Chinese society for centuries, emphasized ancestor worship, filial piety, and respect for social hierarchy, values that often clashed with Christian teachings. Moreover, the missionaries' association with foreign powers, many enjoyed the protection of their home governments under the unequal treaties, reinforced the perception that they were agents of Western imperialism. Chinese Christians, often converts from the lower classes, found themselves caught between their new faith and the suspicions of their countrymen. The missionaries' presence, particularly in rural areas, often sparked local conflicts. Disputes over land ownership, religious practices, and the perceived arrogance of some missionaries further inflamed tensions. These conflicts, though often small in scale, contributed to the growing anti-foreign sentiment that would eventually erupt in the Boxer Rebellion. The late 19th century was a time of profound social and economic upheaval in China. Natural disasters, including floods, droughts, and epidemics, ravaged the countryside, compounding the misery of a population already struggling with poverty and overpopulation. The influx of foreign goods, facilitated by the unequal treaties, had a devastating impact on traditional Chinese industries. Cheap textiles from British mills undercut local weavers, while manufactured goods flooded the market, displacing Chinese artisans. The result was widespread unemployment, economic hardship, and a growing sense of despair. The Qing government, weakened by corruption and internal divisions, seemed powerless to alleviate the suffering of its people. In the face of these calamities, many Chinese turned to traditional beliefs and secret societies for solace and a sense of hope. The Boxers, with their promise of supernatural powers and their message of resistance against foreign influence, provided a powerful outlet for this discontent. They preached that their rituals could make them impervious to bullets and foreign weapons, a message that resonated deeply with a people desperate for a savior. The Boxer Rebellion, which had been simmering for years, finally erupted in the spring of 1900. Fueled by a potent mix of anger, desperation, and religious fervor, Boxer bands began attacking foreign missionaries, Chinese Christians, and symbols of foreign influence. These attacks, initially sporadic and localized, quickly spread like wildfire across northern China. The Boxers, armed with swords, spears, and a fervent belief in their own invulnerability, rampaged through villages and towns, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. The Qing government, caught between its own internal divisions and the growing threat of the Boxers, vacillated in its response. Some officials, sympathetic to the Boxers' anti-foreign sentiments, secretly encouraged their activities, hoping to use them as a tool to regain control from foreign powers. Others, recognizing the danger posed by the Boxers' violence, sought to suppress them, but their efforts were often half-hearted and ineffective. As the violence escalated, foreign powers began to take notice. Reports of missionary killings, destroyed property, and besieged foreign communities reached Western capitals, sparking outrage and demands for action. The stage was set for a major international crisis. In June 1900, the Boxer Rebellion reached a fever pitch when Boxer forces, supported by elements of the Qing military, besieged the foreign legations in Beijing. Hundreds of foreign diplomats, missionaries, soldiers, and Chinese Christians found themselves trapped inside the diplomatic quarter, surrounded by a hostile and determined enemy. The siege of the legations would last for 55 agonizing days, a period of intense fighting, deprivation, and fear. The defenders, outnumbered and outgunned, fought bravely to hold off the Boxers' relentless attacks. They hastily fortified their positions, using whatever materials they could find, furniture, sandbags, even books, to build barricades and gun emplacements. Inside the legations, a sense of desperation and camaraderie prevailed. Diplomats, accustomed to the comforts of diplomatic life, found themselves sharing cramped quarters, meager rations, and the constant threat of death. Women and children endured the siege with remarkable resilience, their spirits bolstered by acts of courage and kindness. The outside world watched in horror as news of the siege filtered out of Beijing. Telegraph lines cut by the Boxers provided only sporadic and unreliable communication. Rumors of massacres and atrocities spread, fueling international outrage and demands for a swift and decisive response. In response to the escalating crisis in China, 8 foreign powers, Japan, Russia, Britain, France, the United States, Germany, Italy, and Austria-Hungary, formed an alliance to protect their interests and citizens. This 8-nation alliance, as it became known, assembled a multinational force, consisting primarily of Japanese, Russian, British, and German troops, and dispatched it to China with orders to relieve the besieged legations and restore order. The arrival of the foreign troops marked a turning point in the Boxer Rebellion. The Allied forces, better equipped and trained than the Boxers and their Qing allies, fought their way towards Beijing, engaging in a series of bloody battles along the way. The Boxers, despite their fanatical zeal and claims of invulnerability, proved no match for the superior firepower and military tactics of the Allied forces. Their attacks, often poorly coordinated and reliant on sheer numbers, were repulsed with heavy casualties. The Eight-Nation Alliance, a formidable force composed of soldiers from across the globe, faced a daunting task. Their objective to march upon Beijing, lift the siege of the Legations, and crush the Boxer rebellion. The journey was fraught with danger, the summer heat oppressive, and the resistance fierce. The Boxers, though lacking the alliance's military prowess, employed guerrilla tactics, melting into the countryside after launching surprise attacks. They believed their righteous fury, combined with spiritual rituals, would render them impervious to foreign bullets. This conviction, while unwavering, proved tragically misguided. Despite the Boxers' determined resistance, the alliance steadily advanced, their superior firepower and discipline taking a heavy toll. Villages and towns along the route to Beijing became battlegrounds, each clash bringing the alliance closer to their objective, yet at a cost. The soldiers, weary from the fighting and the unforgiving climate, pressed on, driven by a combination of duty, national pride, and a desire to rescue their countrymen trapped within the besieged legations. The fate of those trapped inside, their supplies dwindling and hope fading with each passing day, rested upon the alliance's success. Tianjin, a strategically vital port city southeast of Beijing, stood as a major obstacle for the alliance. Heavily fortified and defended by a combined force of Boxers and Qing troops sympathetic to their cause, Tianjin represented a significant military objective. The Battle of Tianjin, fought in the sweltering heat of July 1900, was a brutal affair. The alliance, bolstered by naval bombardments from their warships anchored offshore, launched a coordinated assault on the city's defenses. The fighting raged for days, a chaotic mix of artillery duels, street-to-street combat, and desperate charges. The Boxers, though inspired by their beliefs, were ill-prepared for the ferocity and technological superiority of the alliance forces. Their fortifications crumbled under the relentless artillery fire, and their attacks, while fierce, were ultimately repelled. The Fall of Tianjin, after days of heavy fighting and significant casualties on both sides, marked a turning point in the campaign. With Tianjin secured, the road to Beijing lay open, and the alliance prepared for the final push to relieve the legations. The capture of Tianjin sent shockwaves through the Qing court. The Empress Dowager Ci, who had initially supported the Boxers, now feared the full wrath of the foreign powers. The alliance, emboldened by their victory, marched towards Beijing, their ranks swelled by reinforcements. On August 14, 1900, the alliance broke through Beijing's defenses, bringing an end to the 55-day siege of the legations. The relief of the legations was met with jubilation by the exhausted survivors, who had endured unimaginable hardship and privation. However, the victory was bittersweet. The city of Beijing, once a symbol of imperial grandeur, lay ravaged by war. The Forbidden City, the heart of the Qing dynasty, was occupied by foreign troops, a stark reminder of China's humiliation. The Boxers, their rebellion crushed, scattered into the countryside, their dream of driving out the foreign devils shattered. The Qing dynasty, its authority severely weakened, was forced to accept the bitter consequences of its disastrous flirtation with the Boxers. The Boxer Rebellion, once a raging inferno of anti-foreign sentiment, was extinguished. In its wake lay the smoldering ruins of Chinese pride and the shattered remnants of the Qing dynasty's authority. The victorious powers, eager to secure their interests and exact retribution, imposed a harsh settlement upon the defeated nation, the Boxer Protocol. Signed in September 1901, the Boxer Protocol was a bitter pill for China to swallow. It stipulated a hefty indemnity of 450 million taels of silver, roughly $333 million at the time, to be paid to the foreign powers over a period of decades. This colossal sum, intended to compensate for damages and military expenses, crippled China's already struggling economy. Beyond the financial burden, the protocol demanded the execution of high-ranking Chinese officials deemed responsible for supporting the Boxers. This act of retribution further humiliated the Qing government, exposing its weakness and inability to protect its own officials. To ensure future compliance, the protocol allowed foreign powers to station troops in strategic locations throughout China, including within the Forbidden City itself. This visible symbol of foreign dominance served as a constant reminder of China's subjugation. The Boxer Protocol cast a long shadow over China's future. The crushing indemnity, coupled with the presence of foreign troops and the expansion of foreign concessions, tightened the grip of foreign influence on the nation. The Qing dynasty, already teetering on the brink, found itself increasingly reliant on foreign powers. Its authority further eroded. The once mighty empire was now reduced to a semi-colonial state, its economy controlled by foreign powers, its government weakened and discredited. The Chinese people, burdened by heavy taxes and subjected to the indignities of foreign occupation, grew increasingly disillusioned with the Qing dynasty. The resentment and humiliation sown by the Boxer Protocol fueled a burgeoning nationalist movement. Chinese intellectuals, writers, and activists began to question the legitimacy of the Qing dynasty and call for radical reforms. They argued for a stronger, more modern China, one capable of resisting foreign domination and regaining its rightful place on the world stage. The Boxer Rebellion, though ultimately crushed, had unintended consequences. It exposed the deep-seated weaknesses of the Qing dynasty and awakened a sleeping giant, Chinese nationalism. The seeds of revolution, sown in the blood and ashes of the rebellion, began to take root. Secret societies, inspired by the Boxers' spirit of resistance, if not their methods, continued to operate underground. They plotted the overthrow of the Qing dynasty and the establishment of a new, more modern government that could restore China's strength and unity. Among these revolutionaries, a young man named Sun Yat-sen emerged as a leading figure. A Western-educated doctor with a vision for a new China, Sun Yat-sen advocated for the overthrow of the Qing dynasty and the establishment of a republic based on the principles of nationalism, democracy, and people's livelihood. Sun Yat-sen's message resonated with growing numbers of Chinese, particularly among the educated elite and urban populations. They were tired of foreign domination, weary of the Qing dynasty's corruption and incompetence, and eager for a new era of strength and prosperity for China. The Boxer Rebellion, a tragic and bloody chapter in Chinese history, inadvertently set the stage for a revolution that would forever alter the course of the nation's destiny. The fall of the Qing dynasty, just over a decade later, would mark the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter in China's long and tumultuous history. The Boxer Rebellion, though fading into the past, left an indelible mark on China's soul. The image of foreign troops marching through the Forbidden City, a symbol of imperial might laid low, seared itself into the nation's memory. The brutal cost of the conflict, measured in lives lost and economic ruin, served as a stark reminder of China's vulnerability in a world increasingly dominated by Western powers. Yet, from the ashes of defeat, a new spirit began to stir. The humiliation of the Boxer Protocol, the blatant disregard for Chinese sovereignty, ignited a firestorm of nationalistic fervor. The Qing dynasty, once seen as the embodiment of divine rule, was now perceived as weak, incompetent, and hopelessly out of touch with the needs of its people. The rebellion, in its tragic but defiant way, had shattered the illusion of imperial invincibility. It revealed the urgent need for modernization, for a stronger and more unified China capable of standing up to foreign aggression. The seeds of revolution, sown in the blood-soaked soil of the Boxer Rebellion, had taken root. The events of 1900 served as a brutal awakening, a catalyst for change that would reverberate for decades to come. China, for centuries a self-contained world unto itself, could no longer ignore the winds of change blowing from the West. The Boxer Rebellion, though a distant event, continues to resonate in the 21st century. Its echoes can be heard in the ongoing debates about globalization, Western influence, and China's place on the world stage. The images of the Boxers, though often romanticized or distorted, still hold a powerful sway over the Chinese imagination. The lessons of the Boxer Rebellion are complex and open to interpretation. Some see it as a cautionary tale against xenophobia and blind nationalism, a reminder of the dangers of resisting progress and clinging to outdated traditions. Others view it as a heroic, albeit ultimately futile, struggle against imperialism, a testament to the courage and resilience of the Chinese people in the face of overwhelming odds. Regardless of interpretation, the Boxer Rebellion serves as a potent reminder of the dangers of unchecked foreign influence, the importance of national unity, and the enduring power of nationalism. It highlights the need for cross-cultural understanding, for a world where dialogue and cooperation, rather than exploitation and violence, define international relations. The Boxer Rebellion, a tragedy born of a clash of cultures and a struggle for national identity, continues to offer valuable lessons for our own time. It reminds us that the past, though seemingly distant, casts a long shadow, and that the events of yesterday can still shape the world we live in today. If you like videos like this, please subscribe and click that notification bell. Thanks for watching This and That News.